I stood in the doorway of conference room B, briefcase still in hand, coat dripping rainwater onto the polished floor. The table was mahogany. Real mahogany, the kind that costs more than most people's cars. Around it sat my son Daniel, his wife Rebecca, and Martin Kowalski, the estate attorney I'd hired 15 years ago to draft my will. Martin's throat clearing had been careful, practiced, the kind of sound you make when you've rehearsed difficult news in front of a bathroom mirror. "I'm sorry," I said. Daniel looked at his hands. Rebecca looked at me with something that wasn't quite a smile. Martin adjusted his reading glasses and repeated himself, slower this time, as if I were elderly or confused. "Mr. Brennan, this meeting was scheduled for Daniel and Rebecca. There's been a misunderstanding." I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me with the expensive whisper of German engineering. "I got an email from your office yesterday. 3:30, conference room B, estate planning review." "Yes," Martin said. That was sent in error." The document lay between us. Even from 6 feet away, I could see my signature at the bottom. The loops were perfect. The way the B connected to the R in Brennan, that little flourish I'd developed in college when I thought signatures mattered, it was all there. I'd signed a lot of papers in my life. Mortgage documents, business contracts, Daniel's permission slips for field trips back when he was young enough to need them. I knew my own handwriting the way you know your reflection. This wasn't my handwriting. It was a photograph of my handwriting. "May I?" I gestured toward the table. No one said yes. No one said no. I walked forward anyway and picked up the document. 23 pages, bound with a navy cover sheet. Revocable Living Trust Amendment, third restatement. The date was 2 weeks ago. I'd been in Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, sitting in a hotel conference room, finalizing a consulting contract that would pay my bills for the next 6 months. I definitely hadn't been here, in Martin's office, signing away my authority over my own assets. "This is interesting," I said. Rebecca shifted in her chair. She wore a cream-colored blazer, no jewelry except her wedding ring. Her hair was pulled back in a way that made her look older, more serious. She'd dressed for business. "Dad," Daniel said. His voice had that careful modulation I'd heard before, the tone he used with difficult clients, with people he was about to disappoint. "We should talk about this privately." "We are private," I said. "It's just us and Martin." I looked at the lawyer. "Martin, how long have we known each other?" 16 years this September." "And in those 16 years, have I ever missed an appointment?" "No." "Ever forgotten to read something before signing it?" "No." "Ever, in any context, asked you to proceed with estate modifications without my explicit in-person approval?" Martin's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "No, Tom, you haven't." I set the document back on the table, aligned it carefully with the edge. The paper was high-quality stock, cream-colored, watermarked. Expensive. Everything about this meeting was expensive. The room, the lawyer, the betrayal. "So," I said, "who signed this?" No one answered. Rain hit the window in waves. 14 floors below, people hurried through downtown Ashland with newspapers over their heads, briefcases held like shields, normal people having normal days. "Tom," Martin said finally, "I think there may have been some miscommunication about the scope of the modifications." Miscommunication implies communication happened in the first place. I pulled out a chair and sat down. No one had invited me to sit, but they hadn't asked me to leave either. "Let's start simple. What does this document do?" Rebecca spoke for the first time. "It updates the trust structure to reflect current family circumstances." "Fascinating," I said. "What circumstances are those?" "Your age," she said. "Your health. The complexity of managing everything." I was 58 years old. I ran 3 miles every morning and could still fit into the suit I'd worn to Daniel's wedding. "I seem to be managing fine," I said. "Are you?" Daniel looked up now, meeting my eyes for the first time. "Dad, you missed Thanksgiving." "I was in Philadelphia." "You're always somewhere." "I'm a consultant. Travel is part of the job." "You don't need the job," Rebecca said. "You have more than enough saved." The conversation was slipping sideways, away from the forged signature and into territory that felt rehearsed. They'd practiced this. Maybe not with Martin. Lawyers charge by the hour, and practice sessions would show up on an itemized bill, but together, in their car, in their kitchen, over wine after I'd declined another dinner invitation. "Let me see the rest of it," I said. Martin hesitated, then slid the full document across the table. I flipped through it slowly. Legal language has its own rhythm, its own music. I'd learned to read it the way you learn to read sheet music, not fluently, but well enough to catch the important notes. Page 4. Trustee authority transferred to Daniel Robert Brennan, effective immediately. Page 7. Medical power of attorney reassigned to Daniel Robert Brennan and Rebecca Ann Brennan, jointly. Page 12. Real property management, including sale and transfer rights, assigned to Daniel Robert Brennan. Page 18. Amended distribution schedule eliminating testator's approval requirement for trust expenditures exceeding $10,000. They'd taken everything except my name. I was still Thomas Michael Brennan on paper, but the signature beside that name, the authority it represented, the legal weight it carried, that belonged to my son now. You'll still have full access to everything, Daniel said. This doesn't change your day-to-day life. Except I can't sell my house. Our concern, Rebecca said, and I noticed the shift from your to our, is that you might make decisions during a period of diminished capacity. I'm not diminished. Not now, she agreed, but we need to plan for the future. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone had left a coffee cup on the credenza, half full, with a lipstick print on the rim. The air conditioning cycled on with a mechanical sigh. These were the details I noticed because I couldn't quite process the larger picture yet. My brain was protecting me, keeping me focused on small things while it worked through the implications in the background. Martin, I said, is this document legally binding? If it's properly executed, yes. Is it properly executed? He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a small cloth from his pocket. Busy work, the kind of thing you do when you don't want to answer. The signature was notarized. By whom? Susan Chen. She's been with the firm for 8 years. And Susan watched me sign this? Susan watched someone sign it. The room went very quiet. Rebecca's expression didn't change. Daniel's did. Just a flicker, the briefest tightening around his eyes. I'd like to speak with Susan, I said. She's not in today, Martin said. Tomorrow, then. Tom. Martin put his glasses back on. I don't think that's productive. I think it's extremely productive. She either watched me sign a document I have no memory of signing, which suggests I need to see a neurologist immediately, or she notarized something without proper verification, which suggests she needs to find a new career. Dad. Daniel's voice had an edge now. You're being difficult. I'm being precise. You're being paranoid. I stood up. The chair rolled back and hit the wall with a soft thump. I'm being systematic. There's a difference. I gathered the pages, tapped them into alignment, and set them in front of Martin. I'll need copies of everything. Every page, every signature, every notarization. I can have my assistant. I'll wait. Martin looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Rebecca. Rebecca looked at me with an expression I'd seen before, years ago, when she'd convinced Daniel to move out of his apartment and into a house they couldn't quite afford. She'd said it was an investment. She'd said it was time to think about the future. She'd been right, technically. The house had appreciated 20% in 3 years. But there was something about the way she'd pushed that had always bothered me. Tom, Martin said, I strongly suggest we all take some time to review this calmly. I am calm. You seem agitated. I seem observant. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'm going to take some photos of these documents while we wait for the copies. Unless there's an objection? No one objected. I photographed each page carefully, making sure the signature was clearly visible. The flash reflected off the glossy paper. Daniel watched me with something that might have been concern or might have been frustration. Rebecca checked her watch. When I finished, Martin left to arrange the copies. The three of us sat in silence. Rain continued its assault on the windows. Somewhere in the building, someone was laughing, high and bright, the kind of laugh you hear at happy hour when the work week is ending and the drinks are cold. You don't trust me, Daniel said finally. I don't trust that signature. You think I forged it? I think someone did. Jesus, Dad. He rubbed his face with both hands. This is exactly why we needed to do this. Do what? Protect you from yourself. The words hung between us like smoke. Rebecca put a hand on Daniel's arm, but he shook it off. I'm not the one who needs protection, I said quietly. No? Daniel leaned forward. You're 58 years old, living alone in a house way too big for one person. Working jobs you don't need, flying to cities where you don't know anyone. Mom's been gone 4 years, Dad. 4 years. When are you going to stop running? I'd wondered when we'd get here, when the real conversation would start. The signature was just the door. This was the room they'd been planning to walk me into all along. I'm not running, I said. I'm living. You're avoiding. I'm working. You're hiding. Martin returned with a manila folder, thick with copies. He set it in front of me without meeting my eyes. Everything's there. If you have questions, you can call the office. I'll have questions, I said. I took the folder and walked to the door. My hand was on the handle when Rebecca spoke. "Tom, we're trying to help you." I turned back. She was standing now, beside Daniel, her hand on his shoulder. They looked united, prepared, like they'd posed for this moment. "Help me with what?" I asked. "Moving forward," she said. "We all need to move forward." I nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right." Something in my tone made Daniel tense, but I was already opening the door, stepping into the hallway where the carpet was beige and the art was meaningless geometric shapes in muted colors. The elevator was waiting, doors open like it had been expecting me. I rode down alone. The folder was heavier than it should have been, or maybe that was just my perception. 14 floors, 30 seconds, enough time to feel the bottom drop out of something I'd thought was solid. In the lobby, a security guard nodded at me. I nodded back. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. People walked past with purpose, umbrellas tucked under arms, phones pressed to ears. They had normal problems, traffic, what to make for dinner. I stood on the sidewalk and breathed cold air and thought about the signature on those documents. The perfect loops, the careful pressure, the attention to detail. Someone had studied my handwriting, someone had practiced it. Someone had gotten good enough to fool a notary, and I had a pretty good idea who that someone was. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. The coffee shop 3 blocks from Martin's office had good Wi-Fi and better privacy. I took a corner table, ordered black coffee I didn't want, and spread the copied documents across the laminate surface like evidence at a crime scene, which, technically, is what they were. My phone showed 4 missed calls from Daniel and 2 text messages from Rebecca. The messages were brief. "Please call when you can, and we need to talk about this rationally." I silenced the phone and focused on the documents. Page 4, Clause 6, Paragraph 3. The language was dense, but the meaning was clear. All trustee powers previously held by Thomas Michael Brennan were hereby transferred to Daniel Robert Brennan, including but not limited to the right to buy, sell, mortgage, lease, or otherwise dispose of trust property. The house I'd lived in for 30 years was trust property. The retirement accounts I'd been building since my 20s were trust property. The life insurance policy I'd maintained through 2 career changes and a mortgage refinance was trust property. All of it could now be sold, borrowed against, or redistributed without my approval or even my knowledge. I photographed each page again, this time uploading them to 3 separate cloud storage accounts. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia is just pattern recognition with better survival instincts. The signature appeared 12 times throughout the document. 12 perfect forgeries, each one witnessed and notarized by Susan Chen, who wasn't in the office today and probably wouldn't be in the office tomorrow either. I pulled up LinkedIn on my phone. Susan Chen had been with Kowalski and Associates for 8 years, according to Martin. LinkedIn confirmed it. Senior Paralegal, Estate Planning Division, September 2017, to present. Her profile showed a professional headshot. Mid-40s, serious expression, the kind of person who understands that legal work requires attention to detail. She had 247 connections. I scrolled through them slowly. Martin Kowalski, 3 other attorneys from the firm, various legal professionals around Ashland, and, halfway down the list, Rebecca Brennan. They'd connected 14 months ago. I sat back and watched steam rise from my untouched coffee. The cafe was filling up with the after-work crowd. Young professionals, mostly, ordering complicated drinks and laughing too loud. A woman at the next table was on a video call, gesturing emphatically at her laptop screen. Behind the counter, an espresso machine hissed and groaned. Normal people, normal lives. I pulled up my own contact list and found a name I hadn't called in 3 years, Jennifer Price, one of the best forensic document examiners in the state. We'd worked together on a corporate fraud case back when I was still consulting full-time. She'd taken me apart on cross-examination, very politely exposed every weakness in my analysis, and then bought me a drink afterward to discuss methodology. Her voicemail picked up after 2 rings. "You've reached Jennifer Price. Leave a message or send a text. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. I sent a text instead. Need your expertise on a signature authentication issue. Can pay rush rates. Tom Brennan." The response came while I was staring at Susan Chen's LinkedIn profile. "Tom, long time. Can meet tomorrow 10 a.m. my office. Send samples." I forwarded the photographs of every signature page, then added, "Need to know if these were signed by the same person." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Call you in 5. 4 minutes later, my phone rang. "Tom," Jennifer said, "I'm looking at your samples now. These are all supposed to be your signatures?" "Yes." When were they executed? 2 weeks ago, according to the documents. Were you present for the signing? No. A pause. I heard keyboard clicking in the background. Tom, I'm not making any conclusions sight unseen, but I need you to understand something. If these signatures aren't authentic, we're talking about notary fraud, possible identity theft, and depending on the value involved, federal charges. I understand. Do you have exemplars? Known authentic signatures I can compare against? I can provide a dozen. Can you come in tomorrow at 10? I'll need the original documents, not just photographs. The originals are with the attorney who prepared them. Then you need to get them, or get a court order compelling him to provide them. She paused. Tom, whose signatures are these, really? That's what I'm hiring you to tell me. No. Her voice was gentle but firm. You know whose signatures these are. You just need me to prove it. I watched the woman at the next table end her video call and close her laptop with more force than necessary. She looked exhausted, defeated. I wondered what had happened in her day to put that expression on her face. My son, I said. I think my son forged my signature. Jennifer didn't respond immediately. When she did, her tone had shifted from professional to something softer. Is this estate planning documents? Yes. Power of attorney transfers? Among other things. Jesus, Tom, she exhaled slowly. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow at 10, you bring everything you have. We document it, we photograph it, we establish chain of custody. Then we analyze it properly. And Tom? Yes? Don't confront anyone until we know for certain. If this is what you think it is, you need evidence, not accusations. I understand. And get a lawyer. Not Martin Kowalski, someone who specializes in estate litigation. I'll make calls tonight. After we hung up, I sat in the coffee shop until the dinner crowd replaced the after-work crowd, and the barista started giving me pointed looks. I bought a muffin I didn't eat and another coffee I didn't drink, and I went through every document page by page, line by line, looking for other anomalies. Page 14. Authorization for Daniel to hire and compensate professional managers, consultants, and advisors at trust expense without requiring competitive bids or prior approval. Page 17. Elimination of the requirement that I be notified of any trust transactions within 30 days. They'd built a machine that could run without me. More than that, they'd built a machine that worked better without me. Every clause, every modification, every carefully worded paragraph had been designed to remove me from my own life, and I'd apparently signed off on all of it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Rebecca. Tom, you're worrying Daniel. Please respond. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, I'm fine. Need some time to process everything. Her response was immediate. We can meet tomorrow to discuss. Lunch? I have appointments tomorrow. When are you free? I'll let you know. 3 dots appeared and stayed on screen for nearly a minute before disappearing without a follow-up message. I imagined her and Daniel in their kitchen, probably the expensive one they'd renovated last year with the imported tile and the professional grade range. She'd be showing him the texts, and he'd be running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was frustrated. They'd be talking strategy. What to say, how to handle this, whether to push harder or pull back. I knew this because I'd raised Daniel to think strategically. I'd taught him to plan ahead, to anticipate obstacles, to never enter a negotiation without knowing your position and your opponent's position and every possible outcome in between. Apparently, he'd learned well. I left the coffee shop as they were flipping chairs onto tables. The mist had turned to fog, thick and damp, turning streetlights into smudges of yellow. My car was in a garage 2 blocks away. I walked slowly, not because I was tired, but because I was thinking. The house Daniel had grown up in was 4,300 square feet on half an acre in a neighborhood that had seemed suburban when we'd moved in, but was now considered urban adjacent. His mother and I had picked it together, arguing good-naturedly about closet space and natural light. She'd won most of those arguments. The house reflected her taste more than mine. After she died, I'd thought about selling. The space felt excessive for one person, but I'd stayed, partly from inertia and partly because leaving felt like erasing her. Now, according to page 12 of the trust amendment, Daniel could sell it without my consent. My car was on level 3. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, counting steps, breathing the concrete smell of parking garages. 83 steps total. My heart rate barely elevated. Remarkable, the doctor had said. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and called the one person whose advice I trusted more than my own. Margaret answered on the 3rd ring. Tom, is everything okay? Margaret Chen, no relation to Susan, had been my wife's best friend and was now, by extension, mine. She was a family law attorney with 30 years of experience and absolutely no patience for bullshit. I need a referral, I said. Estate litigation. Someone who's not afraid to go after family. What happened? I told her. The meeting, the signature, the documents. She listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I appreciated most about Margaret. She didn't waste time with platitudes or false comfort. When I finished, she said, "You're sure it's forged? I'm getting it analyzed tomorrow. And you think Daniel did this? Him or Rebecca, or both? Motive? Control, money. Maybe they think I'm incompetent." "Are you?" "Margaret." "I'm serious, Tom. I need to know if there's any legitimate basis for concern. Memory issues, confusion, behavioral changes. I'm fine. When's the last time you saw a doctor?" 4 months ago. Clean bill of health." She made a humming sound that meant she was thinking. "Okay, I'm going to give you 2 names. Peter Whitmore handles estate disputes. He's aggressive, thorough, and expensive. Claire Santos is younger but brilliant. She'll be half the cost and twice as motivated to prove herself." "Which one would you choose?" "For this? Peter, you're going to need someone who can make opposing counsel uncomfortable." She gave me his number and made me promise to call in the morning. Then she said, "Tom, if this is real, if Daniel actually forged your signature, you need to prepare yourself for what comes next." "I know." "No, I don't think you do." Her voice was gentle now. "If you pursue this, you're not just challenging the documents. You're accusing your son of fraud. That's not something families come back from easily." "He forged my signature, Margaret." "Maybe, probably. But once you say it out loud, once you file papers, once lawyers get involved, there's no undoing it. You need to be certain this is the path you want." I looked through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking garage. Someone had spray-painted "Trust No One" in red letters, probably years ago, now faded to pink. "I'm certain," I said. After Margaret hung up, I sat in the car for another 20 minutes, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Daniel at 8, missing his front teeth, holding a trophy from his first soccer tournament. Daniel at 16, trying to look serious in his junior prom tuxedo. Daniel at 24, standing beside me at his mother's funeral, his face composed and empty. I'd been proud of how he'd handled it, how controlled he'd stayed, how he'd managed the logistics, made the arrangements, greeted the mourners with appropriate solemnity. Now I wondered if that control was something deeper, something colder. My phone buzzed again, not Daniel or Rebecca this time, but an unknown number with a local area code. "Mr. Brennan, this is Susan Chen, from Kowalski and Associates. Mr. Kowalski asked me to give you a call." Her voice was tight, nervous. "Susan," I said, "thank you for calling." Mr. Kowalski said there were some questions about documentation I'd notarized. "That's right. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss it." "I'm not sure that's appropriate." "Why not?" "It's just, I don't think I should discuss client matters without Mr. Kowalski present." "Susan, did you watch me sign those trust documents 2 weeks ago?" Silence. "Susan, I need to go, Mr. Brennan. I'm sorry." She hung up before I could respond. I tried calling back. It went straight to voicemail. I started the car and drove home through fog so thick I could barely see the taillights of the car ahead of me. The radio played soft jazz, something with a melancholy saxophone. I turned it off and drove in silence. The house was dark when I arrived. I'd left lights on this morning. I always left lights on, but now every window was black. I sat in the driveway with the engine running, looking at the dark house, and felt something shift in my chest. They had keys. Daniel had keys because I'd given them to him years ago, for emergencies. Rebecca had keys because Daniel had keys. I pulled out my phone and called Jennifer Price again. "Tom, it's almost 10 o'clock. Does your analysis include checking for break-ins?" "What?" "My house. Someone's been inside. I left lights on. They're off now." "Are you in the house?" "I'm in the driveway." "Don't go in. Call the police." And tell them what?" "My son might have turned off my lights." "Tom." Her voice was sharp now. "If someone forged your signature on documents that transfer legal control of your assets, and if that same someone now has access to your house, you need to take this seriously. Call the police. File a report. Establish a record." She was right. I knew she was right. But calling the police meant escalating this from private dispute to public accusation. It meant putting everything in motion, starting a process that couldn't be stopped. "Tomorrow," I said. "After I see you, after we confirm the forgery." "Tom." "Tomorrow," I repeated, and hung up. I sat in the driveway for another 10 minutes, watching the dark windows, before finally getting out of the car and walking to the front door. The key turned smoothly. No forced entry. The alarm panel inside showed the system had been disarmed at 4:47 p.m., almost 2 hours after the meeting in Martin's office. Someone with the code had let themselves in. I turned on every light in the house and walked through each room slowly. Nothing was obviously missing or disturbed. The TV was still on its mount. My laptop was still on the kitchen counter where I'd left it this morning. My mother's jewelry, stored in a box in the bedroom closet, was untouched. But my office was different in a way I couldn't quite identify at first. The desk was neat, like always. The filing cabinet was closed, like always. The bookshelf was organized, like always. Then I realized the filing cabinet was locked. I never locked the filing cabinet. I lived alone. There was no reason to lock it. I tried my key. It didn't work. Someone had changed the locks. The courthouse steps were crowded with lawyers and clients spilling out after morning hearings. I stood in the cold March air, watching Daniel and Rebecca exit 30 seconds after us. They paused at the top of the steps. Rebecca said something to Richard Moore, who shook his head. Then all three of them walked down to street level, heading toward the parking garage. Daniel glanced back once. Our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. Then he turned away and kept walking. Peter touched my arm. "Let them go, Tom." "I'm not doing anything." "I know that look. You're planning something." "I'm planning to go home and wait for the criminal investigation." "That's exactly what you should do. Let the DA handle this now. Our job is done." But our job wasn't done. Judge Crawford had frozen the assets. Yes, she'd referred the case for criminal prosecution, yes, but Rebecca and Daniel were still walking free, still living in their mortgaged house, still making plans, still thinking they could win. I drove home and spent the afternoon organizing documents for the DA. Peter had said someone from the fraud division would contact me within 48 hours. I wanted everything ready, every piece of evidence, every timeline notation, every proof point. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. "Mr. Brennan, this is Detective Sarah Walsh, Ashland PD. I'm with the Fraud and Financial Crimes Unit. I understand Judge Crawford referred a case to our office this morning." "That's correct." "I'd like to meet with you to discuss the details. Would tomorrow morning work? Say 10 o'clock at the station?" "I'll be there." "Excellent. Bring any documentation you have. The trust documents, forensic reports, witness statements, everything. Already prepared." "Good." A pause. "Mr. Brennan, I have to ask, how are you holding up? These family cases can be difficult." "I'm fine." "If you need resources, counseling, support services." "I need justice, Detective. Everything else is secondary." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Brennan." That evening, Margaret called. "Tom, I heard about the hearing. Peter said it went well." "As well as could be expected." "How do you feel?" "Vindicated, angry, sad. Pick one." "You can feel all of them. They're not mutually exclusive." I walked to the window. The street was quiet. Normal evening activity. People coming home from work. Kids playing in yards. Dogs being walked. Life continuing as usual while mine fell apart. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "In your 30 years practicing family law, have you ever seen a case like this? A child forging a parent's signature to seize control of assets?" "Not exactly like this, no. But I've seen variations. Adult children who think they know better, spouses who manipulate finances, family members who exploit the elderly or vulnerable." "I'm not elderly or vulnerable." "I know that. But Daniel and Rebecca convinced themselves you were. Or they convinced themselves it was justified. People can rationalize almost anything when they want something badly enough." "What happens now? Realistically?" "The DA investigates. If there's sufficient evidence, which there clearly is, they'll file charges. Fraud, forgery, possibly conspiracy. Daniel and Rebecca will have the option to take a plea deal or go to trial." "What kind of plea deal?" "Depends. Restitution, probation, community service, possibly jail time, though for first-time offenders with no violence, prison is unlikely." "So they get away with it?" "No, Tom. They get charged, convicted, and punished. That's not getting away with it. It's not enough." "What would be enough?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know what would be enough. Jail time, public humiliation, financial ruin. None of it would undo the betrayal. None of it would restore what had been broken. "Tom," Margaret said gently, "at some point you have to let the system work. You've done your part. You've proven the fraud. You've protected your assets. Now let the DA handle prosecution. You're right. I don't believe you. You should. Tom, promise me you won't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that could compromise the criminal case. Anything that could make you look vindictive. Anything that could be used against you. I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room and thought about promises. I'd made a lot of them over the years. To my wife, to love and honor. To Daniel, to support and guide. To myself, to be rational, measured, fair. I'd kept all those promises, and look where it had gotten me. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is Rebecca. We need to talk. Privately. Without lawyers, please. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, When? Tonight. There's a diner on Route 9. The Silver Star. Meet me there at 8. Why should I? Because I'm going to tell you the truth. All of it. I showed the text to Peter via screenshot. His response came back in all caps. Do not meet with her. This is either a setup or an attempt to compromise the case. But I was tired of being careful. Tired of doing everything the safe, legal, proper way. So at 7:45, I got in my car and drove to the Silver Star Diner on Route 9. The place was half empty. Fluorescent lights, red vinyl booths, a smell of coffee and fried food. Rebecca sat in a back corner, facing the door. She stood when I approached. Thank you for coming. Talk, I said. She gestured to the booth. Please sit. I slid in across from her but didn't order anything. A waitress came by, noticed the tension, and retreated without asking. I'm going to be direct, Rebecca said. Daniel didn't forge those signatures. I did. I know. He knew I was doing it. He approved, but the actual forgery was mine. Why are you telling me this? Because the DA is going to charge both of us, and I can't let Daniel go to prison for something I did. I studied her face. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The polished professional veneer was gone. You're going to take the fall alone? I asked. If I have to, yes, but I'm hoping I won't have to. What do you want, Rebecca? She took a breath. I want you to tell the DA that Daniel wasn't involved, that I acted alone, that he had no knowledge of the forgery. That's a lie. Is it? How do you know? Susan Chen testified that both of you were involved in planning this. Susan Chen testified that I consulted her about hypothetical scenarios. She never spoke to Daniel. She never witnessed any conversation between Daniel and me about forging signatures. I leaned back. You're trying to protect him. I'm trying to protect my family. Her hand moved to her stomach again. Tom, I'm 12 weeks pregnant. If I go to prison, my child grows up without a mother. If Daniel goes to prison, my child grows up without a father. But if you give the DA a statement saying Daniel wasn't involved, they'll focus their case on me, and I can negotiate a better plea deal alone than we can together. You're asking me to commit perjury. I'm asking you to show mercy. Where was your mercy when you practiced my signature for 3 months? She flinched but didn't look away. You're right. I have no moral standing here. I did something terrible. I violated your trust. I deserve whatever punishment I get. But Daniel doesn't. He made a mistake trusting me. That's not the same as forging your signature. He brought me to the meeting. He sat there while Martin explained the documents. He knew what was happening. He knew there were trust amendments. He didn't know the signatures were forged. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to ask yourself if destroying your son's life is worth it. The waitress came by again. This time Rebecca ordered coffee. I still didn't order anything. When the waitress left, I said, Tell me the real reason you did this. I told you. We needed, not the money story, the real reason. Rebecca stared at her coffee cup. You want the truth? That would be refreshing. Fine. The truth is you made it easy. You disappeared after your wife died. You stopped being present. You stopped being a father. Daniel would call you, and you'd be in Philadelphia or Boston or wherever. He'd invite you to dinner, and you'd cancel. Holidays, birthdays, ordinary Tuesday evenings, you were always somewhere else. Working, traveling, running away. I was grieving. You were abandoning. And I watched Daniel wait for you to come back. Wait for you to be his father again. But you never did. So I decided if you weren't going to be present in his life, you could at least be useful to it. The words landed like blows. Not because they were unfair, but because they contained truth. I had pulled away. I had traveled more. I had avoided the house and the memories and the constant reminder of what I'd lost. So you stole from me as revenge, I said. I secured assets for Daniel's future, and yes, maybe there was some anger in it, some resentment, because you have all this money, all this security, and you act like none of it matters, like you don't need it or want it. So I thought, why not give it to someone who does? By committing fraud. By taking what would have been Daniel's anyway when you die. I'm 58 years old, Rebecca, not 88. I could live another 30 years. Or you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Life is uncertain, Tom. I was planning for uncertainty. We sat in silence. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clattered. Normal sounds in an abnormal conversation. You're not going to help me, are you? Rebecca said finally. No. Not even for Daniel? Especially not for Daniel. He needs to face consequences. Learn that actions have repercussions. That you can't just take what you want because you think you deserve it. Even if those consequences destroy him? Even then? She nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. But Tom, you need to understand something too. This isn't over. The restraining order is temporary. The criminal case will take months. And during those months, I'm going to fight. I'm going to use every legal strategy, every delay tactic, every appeal process available. I'm not going to make this easy for you. I didn't expect you would. And when this is finally done, when all the legal battles are over, you'll have won. You'll have your money and your house and your vindication, but you'll have lost your son. Because Daniel will never forgive you for this, and your grandchild will grow up not knowing you. Is that victory worth it? I stood up. That's Daniel's choice, not mine. He chose to forge my signature. He chose to betray my trust. Whatever happens now is consequence, not punishment. There's no difference. There's every difference. I walked out of the diner without looking back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and called Peter Whitmore. I met with Rebecca, I said. Jesus Christ, Tom, I specifically told you not to. She tried to get me to lie to the DA, say Daniel wasn't involved. What did you tell her? No. Good. Anything else? She's 12 weeks pregnant. She's going to use that for sympathy. Probably, but it won't change the facts of the case. Peter, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to make this hurt. The criminal case, the civil restitution, all of it. I need them to feel every consequence. Tom, the DA handles criminal prosecution. I handle civil matters. I can't influence, but you can push. You can advocate. You can make sure they don't get any deals that let them off easy. Is this about justice or revenge? What's the difference? Peter was quiet for a long moment. Tom, I'll do my job. I'll represent your interests zealously and within the bounds of law, but I won't pursue vengeance. That's not what lawyers do. Maybe it should be. I hung up and drove home through darkness. The house was empty and would stay empty. No wife to greet me, no son to call and check in, just me and my vindication. Rebecca was right about one thing. I would win this case. The evidence was overwhelming. The DA would prosecute. Daniel and Rebecca would be convicted or plead out, and then I'd be alone with my victory. But that was fine. I'd gotten good at being alone over the past 4 years. I'd gotten good at filling empty hours with work and travel and purposeful distraction. I could keep doing that. For 30 more years, if necessary. Detective Walsh met me in an interview room at the police station. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of focused attention that meant she didn't miss details. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming in. I've reviewed the case file from Judge Crawford's hearing. The evidence is pretty solid. Good. I need to take your formal statement. Walk me through the timeline from your perspective. I spent 90 minutes recounting everything. The meeting in Martin's office, the forged signatures, the storage facility, Rebecca's midnight confession at the diner. Detective Walsh took notes and asked clarifying questions, always bringing me back to specific dates and times. And you never gave anyone permission to sign documents on your behalf? She asked. Never. Not even informally? Maybe you were traveling and told your son he could handle some paperwork? No. Because that would be a defense, if they can argue you had an understanding, even an informal one, that complicates prosecution. There was no understanding. There was no permission. There was fraud. She nodded. Okay. Last question. What outcome are you hoping for here? Criminal conviction, jail time if possible, restitution, whatever the law allows. Even though your son's wife is pregnant? Especially because she's pregnant. That child should learn early that actions have consequences. Detective Walsh studied me for a moment. Mr. Brennan, I've worked fraud cases for 12 years. Usually when it's family, people want restitution and peace. They don't want prosecution. They want everyone to move on. I'm not everyone. No, she agreed. You're not. Oh, after the interview, I drove to my lawyer's office. Peter had asked me to stop by to discuss the civil case strategy. His office was on the 16th floor with views of downtown Ashland. How'd it go with Detective Walsh? He asked. Fine, she's thorough. Good, that's what we need. He pulled out a folder. Now, let's talk about the civil restitution case. Even if they're convicted criminally, we should file a separate civil suit for damages. What damages? They didn't actually steal anything. Emotional distress, legal fees, cost of forensic analysis, storage facility rental, time and resources spent unwinding their fraud. It adds up. How much are we talking? Conservative estimate? $200,000? I whistled. They don't have that kind of money. Then we'll get a judgment and garnish wages, or force a sale of assets. The house, their cars, whatever we can reach. You want to take their house? I want to ensure they can't profit from their fraud. If that means taking their house, yes. I thought about Daniel and Rebecca's home, the one they'd renovated, the one they could barely afford, the one where they'd planned to raise their child. Do it, I said. Peter made a note. There's one other thing. I got a call this morning from Richard Moore. He wants to discuss settlement. Settlement? Daniel and Rebecca are willing to sign over all claims to your estate, formally acknowledge the fraud, and pay restitution over time in exchange for you asking the DA to drop criminal charges. No. Tom, think about it. You get everything you want, full control of your assets, formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing, restitution, without the uncertainty of a trial. And they get to avoid jail. Yes. No deal. Tom? Peter, I hired you to fight for me, not to negotiate surrender. I'm hired to serve your best interests. Sometimes that means compromise. My best interest is seeing them punished. Is it? Or is your best interest moving on with your life? I stood up. I'll pay your bill through today. After that, I need a lawyer who's actually willing to fight. Peter didn't stand, just looked at me with an expression that might have been pity or might have been disappointment. Tom, I've been practicing law for 37 years. I've seen hundreds of cases like this, and I can tell you from experience, the clients who demand maximum punishment are never satisfied when they get it, because punishment doesn't heal the wound, it just confirms the damage. Then I'll be unsatisfied with a conviction, but at least I'll have a conviction. I walked out before he could respond. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and called Margaret Chen. Tom, what's wrong? I need a new lawyer. Peter's trying to get me to settle. Settlement isn't always a bad thing. It is when it means letting them avoid jail time. Margaret sighed. Tom, are you sure this is what you want? Really sure? Yes, because you're burning bridges. Peter Whitmore is one of the best estate lawyers in the state. If you fire him and word gets out. I don't care about word getting out. I care about justice. Justice or vengeance? Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because there's an important difference, and you seem unable to see it. I closed my eyes. The parking garage was cold and smelled like concrete and exhaust fumes. Margaret, they forged my signature. They tried to steal my life. How am I supposed to just let that go? I'm not saying let it go. I'm saying pursue it proportionally. What's proportional? Conviction, probation, restitution, that's proportional. Crushing them financially and demanding maximum jail time? That's vengeance. Maybe vengeance is what I need. Maybe it's what you want. Those aren't the same thing. After Margaret hung up, without giving me another lawyer referral, I drove home and spent the rest of the day researching criminal penalties for forgery in my state. Maximum sentence, 5 years. Typical sentence for first-time offenders, probation, or up to 18 months. I wanted the 5 years. That evening, Rebecca called. Tom, please listen to me. I'm done listening, Rebecca. Daniel's falling apart. He can't eat, can't sleep. He's convinced he's going to prison. He might be right. Is that what you want? Your son in prison? I want your son to understand consequences. Our son, she said. He's yours too. You don't stop being a father just because you're angry. I didn't stop being a father. Daniel stopped treating me like one. He made a mistake. He committed a crime. Tom, if you push this, if you refuse settlement, if you demand maximum punishment, you'll lose Daniel forever. He'll never speak to you again. Your grandchild will never know you. Is that really what you want? What I want is irrelevant. The law decides what happens now. The law gives prosecutors discretion. Judges consider victim input. You could tell them you want leniency. Why would I do that? For Daniel. Rebecca, You seem to think I should prioritize Daniel's well-being over my own dignity. You seem to think his mistake is more important than my rights. But here's what you are missing. Daniel's well-being stopped being my responsibility the moment he forged my signature. Now it's his responsibility, and yours. So figure it out without asking me to sacrifice my justice for his convenience. I hung up. My phone rang again immediately. I didn't answer. 3 more calls from Rebecca, 2 from Daniel, 5 text messages pleading for me to reconsider. I blocked both their numbers. Then I called Detective Walsh. Mr. Brennan, is everything okay? I want to report harassment. Rebecca and Daniel are calling repeatedly, trying to pressure me to drop charges. Have they threatened you? Not explicitly, but they're trying to manipulate me emotionally. That's not illegal, Mr. Brennan. Can you make it stop? I can talk to them, explain that contacting you could be construed as witness tampering, but they have a right to try to resolve this. They have a right to lawyer communication, not direct harassment. I'll make a call. But Tom, if I may, you might want to consider meeting them halfway. Not dropping charges entirely, but perhaps supporting a plea deal with reduced sentencing. Why would I do that? Because sometimes the punishment isn't worth the cost. Not to them, to you. Carrying this much anger is going to consume you. Everyone seems very concerned about my emotional well-being suddenly. Because we've seen this before. People who pursue maximum punishment often end up more damaged than the people they're punishing. After Detective Walsh hung up, I sat in my house and looked at the photographs on the walls. My wife smiling in Yellowstone, Daniel graduating high school, the 3 of us at Christmas years ago when everything was normal. I could take those photos down, pack them away, erase the visual reminders of what used to be, but that felt like surrender. Instead, I left them up. Proof that I'd had something worth protecting. That the betrayal meant something because the relationship had meant something. My phone buzzed. Email from Peter Whitmore's office. Tom, I understand you're disappointed with my recommendation, but I stand by it. Please reconsider before hiring someone else. Attached is my final bill for services rendered. Best wishes, Peter. The bill was for $4,300. Expensive lesson in loyalty. I paid it immediately and started researching aggressive prosecutors in the area. Someone who wouldn't push for settlement. Someone who believed in maximum consequences. Tomorrow, I'd make calls, find the right person, build the right case. Tonight, I'd sit in my empty house and plan the next phase. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The prosecutor assigned to the case was named Vincent Reyes. Mid-50s, 2 decades in the DA's office, reputation for being aggressive but fair. I met him in his office 3 days after the police interview. Mr. Brennan, I've reviewed the evidence Detective Walsh compiled. It's solid. Forgery, fraud, possibly identity theft. We could charge both defendants with multiple counts. Good. However, I need to manage your expectations. Richard Moore has already reached out about a plea agreement. His clients are willing to plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for probation and restitution. No jail time? Probably not. First offense, no violence, pregnant defendant. Judges don't usually send those people to prison. So they get away with it. They don't get away with it. They get convicted felons. They pay restitution. They're on probation for years. That's not nothing. I leaned forward. Mr. Reyes, let me be clear about something. I don't want a plea deal. I don't want probation. I want a trial. I want them to face a jury. I want maximum consequences. Mr. Brennan, and I know you're going to tell me that trials are expensive and risky and time-consuming. I don't care. I'll testify. I'll sit through every day of trial. I'll do whatever you need. Reyes studied me. Why? Why what? Why are you so committed to maximum punishment? Most victims in fraud cases just want their money back. They want resolution. You're pushing for something else. I'm pushing for justice. You're pushing for revenge. There's a difference. Everyone keeps telling me that, but no one can explain what the actual difference is. Justice is about restoring balance. Revenge is about inflicting pain. Reyes leaned back in his chair. Mr. Brennan, I'll be honest with you. I can prosecute this case aggressively. I can take it to trial if that's what you want. But I need to know you're doing this for the right reasons. Define right reasons. Reasons that won't make you regret this 5 years from now when your son still isn't speaking to you and your grandchild doesn't know who you are. That's Daniel's choice. It's a consequence of yours. I stood up. Are you going to prosecute this case or not? I'll prosecute it. But I'm going to offer them a plea deal first. Standard procedure. If they reject it, we go to trial. What's the plea offer? Guilty to fraud and forgery, 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution, no contact with you for the duration of probation. That's nothing. That's a felony conviction that will follow them for life. They'll never practice law, never get security clearance, never work in finance. Their professional lives are over. Not good enough? It's what I can justify to my boss. Take it or leave it. I left his office frustrated but not surprised. The system wasn't designed for victims like me. It was designed to process cases efficiently, not to deliver satisfaction. But there were other ways to get satisfaction. I spent the next week implementing what I thought of as the parallel strategy. While the criminal case ground through its bureaucratic processes, I pursued civil remedies. First, I filed a civil suit for fraud and emotional distress. Peter had refused to do it, so I hired a younger, hungrier attorney named James Park, who promised to pursue every available avenue. We can get damages, legal fees, and punitive sanctions, James said at our initial meeting. Punitive is where it really hurts. We can argue their conduct was so egregious that basic compensatory damages aren't enough. How much in punitive damages? If we can convince a jury this was calculated and malicious, sky's the limit, $500,000, maybe more. They don't have that kind of money. Then we force a sale of assets, house, cars, retirement accounts if we can reach them. Do it. Second, I filed complaints with every professional licensing board I could find. Rebecca's real estate license, Daniel's business certifications, even Martin Kowalski's law license, arguing he should have caught the forgery. Most of the complaints went nowhere, but the real estate board opened an investigation into Rebecca. The hearing was scheduled for 2 months out. Third, and most satisfying, I used my professional connections to make their lives difficult. I knew people. 30 years of consulting work had built a network spanning multiple industries. So I made calls. To the bank that held Daniel and Rebecca's mortgage, you should know the borrowers are under investigation for fraud. To Rebecca's employer, your senior agent is facing criminal charges for forgery. To Daniel's biggest client, I thought you should be aware of some character concerns. Were these calls vindictive? Absolutely. Were they effective? Very. Within a week, Daniel had lost 2 major clients. Rebecca was placed on administrative leave from her real estate firm pending the investigation. Their mortgage rate increased by 2 points after a risk assessment review. Margaret called me after hearing about the calls. Tom, what are you doing? Protecting people from doing business with criminals. You're sabotaging them. I'm informing people of relevant facts. You're being vindictive. So it's going to come back on you. Word gets around. People talk. You're building a reputation as someone who can't be trusted to handle conflict professionally. I don't care. You should, because when this is over, you'll still need to work. You'll still need clients. You'll still need your reputation. When this is over, I'll have my dignity. Will you? Or will you just have a pile of rubble where your family used to be? I hung up on her. She didn't call back. By the end of the second week, Daniel and Rebecca were in serious financial trouble. The mortgage increase meant they couldn't make their payment. Rebecca's administrative leave was unpaid. Daniel's client loss meant his income had dropped by 60%. I knew this because I was monitoring their financial situation carefully. Not illegally, just watching public records, credit reports, bankruptcy filings. All perfectly legal information gathering. James Park called with an update on the civil suit. They're going to fight it. Richard Moore filed a motion to dismiss, arguing you can't prove damages beyond what the criminal case will handle. Can we beat the motion? Probably, but it'll take time. And Tom, I have to tell you, they're going to countersue. For what? Malicious prosecution. They're arguing you're using the legal system to harass them, that you've made defamatory statements to their employers and clients, that you're intentionally trying to destroy their livelihood. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been pretty aggressive in making their lives difficult. They forged my signature, and they're being prosecuted for it. But what you're doing now, the phone calls, the complaints, the financial pressure, that's separate. And if they can prove you're acting out of spite rather than legitimate legal interest, you could be liable. Let them try. Tom, I need you to stop. Stop calling their employers. Stop filing complaints. Stop monitoring their finances. Let the legal cases proceed on their merits. No. Then I'm withdrawing as counsel. I won't be part of a harassment campaign. He hung up before I could respond. I was going through lawyers quickly. Peter, then James. I needed someone who understood that sometimes justice requires pressure, someone willing to do what was necessary. Instead of hiring another lawyer immediately, I decided to handle things myself for a while. I had the time, I had the motivation, and I was learning that lawyers were too worried about ethics and professional reputation to be truly effective. That evening, Rebecca showed up at my house. I watched her on the security camera, heavily pregnant now, looking exhausted, standing on my porch in the rain. I didn't open the door. She knocked for 5 minutes. Then she stood there in the rain for another 10, just waiting. Finally, she pulled out her phone and called mine. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I listened to it after she drove away. Tom, I know you're there. I know you're watching. I need you to stop, please. We've lost almost everything. Daniel is falling apart. I'm terrified about the baby. We get it. We understand we did something terrible. We're sorry. We're willing to pay whatever price the legal system demands. But what you're doing now, destroying our livelihood, sabotaging our professional relationships, forcing us into bankruptcy, that's not justice. That's cruelty. And I don't know what happened to make you this cruel, but it's not the man Daniel told me about. It's not the man who raised him. Please, please just stop. I listened to the voicemail 3 times, then I deleted it and went back to monitoring their credit report. 2 days later, Daniel sent an email. Subject line, "Please, Dad." The email was long. Pages of apologies and explanations and pleas for mercy. He explained the financial pressure they were under, the mounting legal bills, Rebecca's pregnancy complications, his anxiety and depression. He ended with, "Dad, you've won. You've proven we were wrong. You've destroyed our reputation and our finances. What more do you want? How much suffering is enough? Because if you're waiting for me to say I'll never speak to you again, here it is. You're right. After this, I never want to see you again. You're not my father anymore. You're just someone who hurt me worse than I hurt you." I closed the email without responding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Daniel's words. Not my father anymore. Was that true? Had I stopped being his father? Or had he stopped being my son the moment he forged my signature? Or maybe we'd both stopped being anything meaningful to each other years ago, and this was just the final acknowledgement of what had already died. At 3 a.m., I got up and walked through the house. Every room empty, every corner quiet. I'd protected all this, my assets, my authority, my autonomy. I'd fought for my rights and proven my case, and now I had a house full of memories and no one to share them with. The photographs on the wall looked different in the darkness, less like memories and more like evidence of something that used to exist but didn't anymore. I thought about Rebecca's voicemail. Her question, "What more do you want?" The honest answer? I didn't know. I wanted them to hurt. They were hurting. I wanted them to lose. They were losing. I wanted them to understand what they'd done. They understood. So why wasn't it enough? Why did I still feel this hollow anger? Maybe Margaret was right. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe punishment didn't heal anything. Maybe it just confirmed that the wound was permanent. But I'd come too far to stop now. Filed too many complaints, made too many calls, burned too many bridges. So I went back to bed and lay there until dawn, not sleeping, just waiting for morning so I could continue the work of destroying my son's life.